Career Reset, the podcast to help you succeed as a job seeker, by Carolina Newmanen.
Hello, it is Carolina from the future, from editing. So I just had to laugh at myself, and I wanted to share this with you, that in that episode I am nicely in front of this very fancy, high quality microphone that I invested a lot of money in and I normally use for my podcasts. But the audio did not sound as good as usually. And I realized that when I start recording the podcast, I have to manually select the audio input, and I did not select the microphone, so it just recorded with my laptop microphone. So that's why the audio is not that high quality, but I mean, neither is the image, neither is anything in this podcast. But I hope that you don't listen for a high quality audio-visual experience, but more for the advice that I am sharing. And I think this is actually super good episode, so please don't let that bad audio discourage you, and just laugh at me with me that I am sitting in front of a good microphone that is not recording the audio at all. Lesson learned. Next time I will triple check that I'm actually recording the audio from the right source. Okay, off to the episode now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Career Reset podcast. So it's Tuesday, and that's a podcast day in my New Year, New Me calendar. And if this works out well, this might be actually the first time in history of this podcast where I meet my original goal of releasing a new episode every week. And I have to say, I was extremely naive when I set this goal originally, how long it actually takes. And I remember when I used to listen to podcasts and the hosts were like, oh, it takes so much time, it's such a big project. And I thought, how is that a big project? You just sit down and you talk, and then you record, and then you upload the recording somewhere. Turns out it is actually a very long process, because first you need to actually think about what you are gonna say. And now I also understand why so many podcasts are interviews, because now I've recorded 2 interviews also, and it is so much easier. You're just asking questions and the other person is creating the content, and you can just see where the conversation goes. But then the editing takes so much time as well. And as I mentioned previously, I do everything myself, including the editing, which I don't know to what extent it makes business sense. But it's just the way I do it, because I first want to learn it by myself and understand how I like to edit my podcast, and then think about if I could delegate that to someone else to save me hours every week. So that's a little bit of a behind the scenes, but yeah, everything is good. I'm in a good mood today. I'm very excited about this topic. I love talking about this kind of thing, so it wasn't very hard to motivate myself to sit down and record. It was a bit harder to get my husband and the toddler out of the house, so that you don't hear the wonderful sounds of her being a toddler in the background. And of course, because it was the new year and I had all these plans, especially related to my health and fitness, because I spent Christmas and New Year's in Spain and I ate the most unhealthy foods ever. Fried fish, fries, bit of alcohol here and there, lots of sweets, lots of pastries. So of course, New Year, New Me was supposed to happen, but I got sick. So for the past week, I felt really bad, and today is the first day in over a week when I'm wearing makeup. So even though I'm trying to look into the camera, I might take a little look at myself, because this is an unfamiliar face that I haven't seen in over a week. But I hope you are just listening to this when you are not actually watching the video, because there is nothing happening. It's just me talking in my office / my daughter's bedroom, because that's the real life. No studio happening here. But I could stop this completely random intro that is in no way connected to today's episode. And maybe there is a reason why I'm avoiding actually starting, because talking about business can bring up some controversies, especially, I'm a coach. That is my job. I'm a career coach. And a coach is talking about business. It's a very specific place on the internet that I have some issues with. There are so many business coaches. Many of them are, of course, excellent and actually help people start and build a successful business. I myself have gained a lot of value from following people who know what they're talking about. But at the same time, I have some kind of ethical worries of creating some kind of a pyramid scheme sort of situation, or not a scheme, but like a pyramid of where I follow coaches who talk about business and I start my business and I talk to people how to start a business. So I spend a lot of time thinking about the angle I want to take talking about this topic. Sometimes on LinkedIn I shared a bit of like what I was going through, like the current situation me and my business were in. But from the very beginning, like from my very first client, it just seems like this is a topic people want to talk about. I would say majority of my clients, of my career coaching clients who hired me to help them either find a job or find a new direction, almost always the topic of business came up. Either that was actually their primary goal and they wanted to get some help from me with getting the idea and getting it off the ground, or it was more of I want a job in this field, and on top of it I also have this business idea, but that's maybe for like later. That's probably not even a good idea, but just it keeps coming up. And last year I was running a big career coaching program with one external organization, and on top of providing access to my online course, I was also hosting Q&A calls. And in these Q&A calls, the question that came up the most, even though the whole topic of the course was career coaching, looking for a new job, aimed for job seekers. So number one question was, should I start a business? Is it a good idea? How should I start a business? What are some like expectations I can have? Could that work? And so on. It's a topic I like. I like talking about it, of course, but because of my ethical constraints that I imposed on myself, if I get a question, I answer it and I move on talking about job seeking topics. But I cannot shake the feeling that starting a business is sometimes the smartest move you can make in this current economy and in this current job market. And the whole point of this episode is going to be to explain more why I think that's the case. And I was planning to record this episode, but I was thinking, first of all, classic imposter thoughts that do I know enough about the topic? Do I have anything valuable to say? There are so many other more qualified people talking about this topic. But just in the past, 4 days, I received one email from a former client who asked me basically that he feels he's kind of hit a wall with how far he can get in his job search, and that he started playing with the idea of starting his business. And I think this is actually a very smart move. And the second situation was another client who got employed after working with me last year. Very exciting role, very exciting company. It even looked like he might be able to get promotion very quickly, like everything was going super well. And then after he's been in that role for, I think, less than 2 months, the company announced that they will be doing layoffs that could potentially be really, really massive layoffs. And this kind of situation always crushes me. It doesn't crush me, of course, nearly as much as the person actually affected by it, but just the anger that I feel towards a company that drags someone through a recruitment process when these kinds of questions must have already been on the top management's mind that this might have to be or might be the case, and then they employ a person, and then within their trial period they announce these massive layoffs. Like I was a ball of anger yesterday when I heard about this, and that was the final push for me to record this episode, because, and this particular client I think didn't mention at all that starting a business is something he's even considering. But I'm thinking for other people who put so much effort that is required nowadays to get a job, to get employed, and having all that effort wiped out within a few weeks and being back to zero, I just cannot help but think that had all that effort been put into building a business, building your own thing, you might have so much more to lean on, and it just puts you in ironically a safer position. But I know that entrepreneurship for different reasons can be controversial, so I wanted to give that introduction to explain where I'm coming from, and also I want to explain when I talk about business and entrepreneurship that can look differently, and I want to talk about a very specific type of entrepreneurship. So I am not talking like startups, developing some big new product, disrupting an industry, securing huge amounts of money. That's not what I'm talking about, because I know nothing about it. There are way more qualified people who talk about that. What I mean by entrepreneurship and business is creating some kind of a solo business, something that is very similar to, let's say, freelancing, being a single person who is providing simple type of service either to individuals or companies, something similar what I do basically. And in my very subjective and personal opinion, it is the best option for what I am after. So why I originally started my business was because the type of work I wanted to do was not available to do as an employee, like to do the work that I want to do in the way that I want to do it, because I believe that's the best way and most effective way to do it. I simply had to do it as an entrepreneur. That was the only alternative. And on top of that, I wanted to have flexibility and be financially secured. I wanted that the money that I earn goes into my pocket, that I am not earning money to pay back investors. I am not earning money to pay my employees. I want my money, basically. And it took a while to even have any money to talk of, but right now I have it. I do the work that I want, I have the flexibility, and I am earning very nice income for myself. That is all I really want, and that is something I think could potentially be a good idea for other people as well. So if that is something that sounds appealing to you, something you have even previously considered, you might have quite an important question of how do I actually get to that place? How do I start my own thing? And that's not what this episode is going to be about, because I'm actually hosting a free webinar that will be fully dedicated to this topic, giving you step-by-step way to start your own thing, your own business, your own side business, whatever you want to call it, without having to put in crazy hours, without burning out, without needing investors. Like if you have had an idea for a project, for a business, for anything like that, and you think that this year should be or could be the year in which you really give it a try, then I want to invite you to that webinar that will happen already this Friday, so very, very soon, and I would love to have you there. Over 65 people already signed up, which is so amazing, and I'm so happy that many people are considering business as a good alternative for them this year. So I will have the link in the description box for you to sign up. So please do sign up. Even if you are just curious, business is one of the ideas you're considering, this webinar will give you the tools that you can try and you can see where it takes you. So it's happening this Friday, 16th of January at 10 a.m. Finnish time, but of course there will be a recording available that you can watch if you can't join us live. I of course highly recommend joining live because it's just more fun to be there with other people and you can ask questions so that the content of the webinar is applicable to your specific case. So the how to start a business, that's for the webinar. What this episode is for is to give you some ideas and some consideration if that is something that actually makes sense. Because I think in the past few years we all rethought that logic that being employed is super secure because it's surprisingly easy for a company to do layoffs and to get rid of people on the claim that they cannot afford to keep on these people. And we often assume that after a layoff you receive some really good severance package, but that is also not the case often. But still, I think this idea prevails that being employed is the safe, steady choice for many people, best you can do. And starting a business is risky, unpredictable in this economy, super hard, super low chance of success, all that kind of stuff. So often when my clients tell me that business is something they are considering, they have all these different questions and they want me to say if it's actually a good idea or if they are fooling themselves. So I want to dedicate the rest of this episode because I've been talking already for almost half an hour and only now am I getting to the actual topic of the episode. So I want to talk why I think it is a good idea. And I'm biased here because I started my business and it has worked pretty well for me. It took a long time, and for a long time it has worked really badly, especially on the financial side. But eventually I got to a pretty good steady place. So I think it's a good idea. And I'm specifically talking about job seekers here. This is a podcast for job seekers. I know that not all of you who are listening are job seekers, and this podcast gives you some ideas for your career. For job seekers, I think it's a very specific situation and it's a topic that does not get talked about very much, because if you are unemployed and you're looking for a job and you say it out loud to anyone, to your friends and family, and you say, I'm considering starting my own business, I can imagine that people are not going to be so much on board because the path to a steady income through employment and the path to steady income through business, those are very different things that take different amount of time. So I understand that if you are a job seeker and you are considering starting your own business, maybe what you are also missing a lot is some place where you can actually talk about this out loud without getting smashed by maybe first find a job and get some steady income and then see how it goes. The prevalent expectation is that if you are unemployed, you should dedicate all your time and energy to looking for a job, to get employed as fast as possible, and then do whatever you want with your life. Then you can start a business. But having that as your primary focus, that is not maybe something that you will get a ton of encouragement for. But as I'm going to talk about in this episode, and I promise I will actually get to it, that may be something we need to rethink. And the situation also is different in Finland, where depending on how long you worked and what was your salary before you got unemployed, you get, I don't know if generous is the right word, but you get unemployment support, which allows you to live actually a pretty decent life. And so that's very, in a way, interesting situation, because in Finland, it's not an existential necessity to find a job. So, and if you are not under this existential threat, and for example, if you have university degree and you have some work experience in a highly qualified field, then you don't necessarily need to start working in a job that does not require these kinds of qualification. And then you might be wondering, what else can I actually do with my time? And that's what I'm gonna talk about. So why do I actually think that if you are in this situation, that you are a job seeker, your basic needs are covered, you can live a decent life on the money you get, or for example your spouse supports you or your parents support you, which is great. You should not be ashamed if that is the case, and you feel like you have tried pretty much everything. You are sending applications, you are active on LinkedIn, you are meeting new people, you are doing everything, and it still is not working out. You're still not able to get interview invites, or you get interview invites, but you are never the top candidate. And you are thinking, should you actually start a business? Would that be a good idea? So I think it would be a good idea. And here are finally the reasons why I think it is a good idea. So firstly, the thing is that even if it's just your partial focus and you are still mainly looking for a new job, it gives you something to actually do. And this is a really big topic for all my unemployed job seekers, that lack of time is not usually one of your issues. It's the abundance of time that eventually becomes the issue, because the expectation is that you use full-time work hours and you put it towards securing employment, finding a job. But there is only so much you can actually do with that amount of time. Of course, you can look for jobs, send applications, you need to tailor your CV to each application, and that in and of itself takes a lot of time. People who have been following me know that I always advise to spend time on 4 main activities when you're a job seeker. So job applying is 1, networking is other, personal branding is the 3rd, and learning new skills, working on your employability is the 4th. And if you spend time on all these activities, your week will get pretty full. But I understand that when it comes to finding employment, sending job applications is in most people's minds like the most direct link to a job. And if you want to understand more about this concept of these 4 activities, then you should check out episode, and I'm not sure what number it was, maybe episode 4, no, maybe episode 5, about strategic job seeking, where I explained this whole concept. But what I see most often is that people looking for jobs spend a lot of time browsing jobs on LinkedIn or on different job boards, creating their applications, editing their CV. And if you're unemployed for a long time, for months or even years, doing this on a daily basis is extremely draining. And it's not really the type of activity that grows your skills in any meaningful way. Like, looking for open jobs is something you kind of have to do to find a job you want to apply for. But editing your CV, sending applications, really not an activity that makes you potentially more employable, that builds any kind of career assets that you will be able to lean on in the future. But instead, if you even partially shift your focus to establishing yourself as an entrepreneur and building your business, that opens very wide range of activities you can start doing. And ironically, these activities are, when you're starting a business, very similar to the activities I recommend you do as a job seeker. So when you think about your business, you probably have some kind of idea of a service that you would like to provide. That's how I started. I thought that I want to help people get jobs. I want to have coaching sessions with people, talking about their careers, goals, and so on. And eventually, of course, I got to do that. But at the start, I had to first find the people who wanted me to coach them to get a job. And that took actually a lot of time and effort and learning. So we're talking here marketing and selling. That is the primary way to get clients. And that's what you have to be doing if you start a business. I don't believe there is a single business that does not need to do marketing and selling. But the question is, what type of marketing are you doing and what type of selling are you doing? So there are lots of different ways. You can, of course, do marketing on social media. You can stand outside and give leaflets to people. You can put posters to different places. You can meet people in person and tell them about what you offer. You can start a blog. You can start a YouTube channel. Million different ways you can talk about your services, and just doing that can fill your calendar quite quickly on top of sending job applications. And if you want to be successful, if you want to start making money off of your business in today's world, in today's economy, you will not be able to get around networking and personal branding. I talk about these two activities ad nauseum when it comes to job seeker. I can imagine if you read my posts on LinkedIn or if you've listened to a few of these episodes, you are now rolling your eyes that am I again talking about networking and personal branding? And yes, I am again talking about networking and personal branding because those are absolutely key activities. With all the AI e-shops and AI profiles and all that very strange world, like people need to know that you are a real person and what kind of real person you are and what you stand for and how you approach your work, and that's where personal branding comes in. But then in order to actually create a service, to provide a service that people want and talk about it in a way that people understand it, you need to do a ton of networking. You need to talk to your potential clients, to your ideal clients. You need to ask them a lot of questions. You maybe have a theory about what challenge would your business solve, but in my experience, it's a theory that is not based on enough data, and you actually need to go out and meet lots and lots of people, and it needs to be people who are in some way related to the industry in which you work, who can give you different insights from different angles. What are the actual challenges they are solving, and what is the language they use to talk about these challenges, so that then you can step by step shape your services so that it actually addresses a real problem, or it is something that people actually want and you are talking about it in a way that makes sense and that is attractive to people. And I'm skipping here to the how, which is supposed to be part of the webinar. So this is just a little taste, but to summarize, once you start focusing on your business, world of options opens to you of all that you could be spending your time on. Because I think there is a difference in the understanding that getting a job is like, I'm maybe over exaggerating here, but that's a basic human right. You are expected to get a job, pay taxes, pay your health insurance and contribute. And that is a common conversation I have with people, with job seekers. They just don't understand why they should exert themselves to secure employment. That is something they kind of have to do. That is expected of them as an adult of a working age, living in a capitalist society. So I understand that there is a bit of a, I don't know if entitlement is the right word, but it's the best word that comes to my mind, like that job is something that you should always have access to. It should be guaranteed for you that you can find a job, and ideally a job in the field in which you have prior experience or, for example, a university degree. But with business, nobody feels entitled to having a successful business, I hope. Everybody expects that to have a successful business, you need to do a lot of work. It's not just gonna take off by itself. When you shift to starting a business, you understand that you need to get out there, you need to do a lot of work for it to be successful. So often the shift in mindset of, okay, let's start a business, that gets people doing much more, taking much more action. And ironically, taking all this action that is primarily aimed at getting your business off the ground can result in you becoming more employable. Or let me reframe that, it's not like it can result, it does result naturally. I 100% believe that people who have any kind of business experience, even if they never publicly launched their business and it was just something they were exploring on the side, are more employable, have more skills that are in demand in the current job market, because they naturally do much more networking, they become more visible, they do a lot of research, they learn a lot, they try different new things, and I have heard of it so many times that someone decided that, okay, I'm done sending these applications that lead me nowhere, I will instead become a freelancer, establish myself within the field in which I'm looking for a job. And they, for a few months, became much more public. They were talking about their experience. They started offering their services. And as a result of this, as the result of being more visible and talking about their expertise, they were actually offered a job. So it can be a funny byproduct. And I don't think it's a failure that you decide to start your business, but then you actually get a good job offer. So you take that job, that is fine. And I think that that's what our careers will start looking like much more, that it's not going to be this, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, or okay, I'm an employee, but we will fluctuate between these, that sometimes we are freelancing for a while, but then a good job offer comes along. So we get employed for a few years, then we get a new idea and we pursue that on our own and we start our business, but then we jump back to being employed. And I would personally like if there was more fluidity in the way people approach their careers and they are taking the step that makes sense in the right moment, without that being something very heavy, that okay, now I'm becoming an entrepreneur, so this needs to be my life, and for the rest of my life I am dooming myself to be an entrepreneur. Always think of what makes sense right now, what is exciting for you right now. If right now it's exciting to start a business, go for it. And as you explore that a little bit more, maybe you discover, wait a second, this is not for me. I want to be an employee. Okay, like nothing has happened. You haven't taken any risks. You are not making any drastic changes. You just naturally came to a spot on your journey where it makes sense to be an employee, and that is completely fine. I am not saying that being an entrepreneur is better than being an employee. It is better for me. I enjoy this much more. This suits me much better. But it's not like that is the general truth that is applicable for everyone. As you are someone who is right here spending time on listening to a career podcast, my guess is that you are someone who is a quite ambitious person who actually cares about their career. You're probably not someone who just works for a paycheck and you don't care really what that work is. So I think it's quite common that people who follow me on LinkedIn or my clients, that obviously they are people who are ambitious, who have bigger than usual goals for their career, and that starting a business is either at the back of their mind or even front of their mind as the right next step for their career. And another super important thing is that an area in which we have work experience and in which we are looking for a new job, but as we potentially struggle to find that job, our connection to that field starts limiting to, again, browsing open jobs, rewriting our CV. Maybe a field you once loved then becomes a field that you start dreading or even hating, because all your connection to it is browsing open jobs and talking about your experience in 100 different ways in your CV. And that is not really a way to feel passionate about the field and feel motivated to work in it. And then when you potentially get invited to an interview, a lot of it is talking about what motivates you to get this job, what motivates you about this field, what interests you about this field. And those questions might be very, very hard to answer when it's been a long time since you actually touched that field in a way that was enjoyable for you. But then allowing yourself to try something new, to start your business, can be very welcome break to rediscover the passion, what brought you into the field in the first place. Once again, getting excited, talking about it and meeting people and researching what's new in the field. And with my clients, where we originally focused on job search and then we switched to a bit more business focused, it was like a switch. I could see it immediately, the difference in their facial expression, the difference in their body language. I could actually see the excitement. So starting a business can reignite you and your love for the field and your interest in the field. And I can say it 1,000 times to job seekers, like, you need to be aware of what trends are happening out there, what's new in your field, what are people talking about. But I understand that it's hard to find the motivation to do so, because it's intangible link that how me doing that is gonna lead to me getting a job. But when talking about entrepreneurship, that is an expected part of it, that you are aware of the trends and what's happening, so that you can shape your service, or you can think how your service fits in. You can use this knowledge in the discussion with potential clients and so on, and the reason why focusing your time on that becomes much clearer. And finally, I want to flip this understanding that we have previously had, that jobs safe, entrepreneurship unsafe. And I want to share a bit of my own story here. So if you have listened to my 3-part career story on the podcast, if you haven't, I really recommend it. I sometimes still can't believe that I was so brutally honest on a public podcast about my career journey. And I might change my mind in the future and decide that that is not something that should be living freely on the internet. But for now, it is there. It's episodes 2, 3, and 4, I believe. Yeah, it's 3 parts. It's pretty long. But that story ends with me starting my business. And I maybe opened up a little bit about the reasons, because that wasn't the point of these episodes. But at that point where I got laid off for the second time, the overwhelming feeling I had at that point about where my career was heading was an extreme disempowerment. I hope that that's a word that I just didn't make up. But I just felt like I have zero control over anything, and that I can go back to job searching and completely exert myself, do a ridiculous amount of work to get a job. And the reality for internationals in Finland, that we often find jobs in smaller companies, startups, newer companies, because these companies tend to be more open towards internationals rather than some very well established big Finnish corporations. It is not universally the truth. There are some big Finnish companies that operate fully in English, but the more likely workplace for me was a startup. The problem with startups, they don't tend to be very stable workplaces. They tend to hire a bunch of people and be super optimistic about the future, and then they realize that they don't have the money to keep on all the people, so they get rid of all these people. And I started really thinking that it's a likely case that that's gonna be my career, that I will get another job, most likely in another startup, and most likely that job is gonna end for the same reason. And I have a university degree. I invested a lot of time, money, and effort into getting myself settled in my career, and I just did not see the returns on that investment when I focused on employment. And I found it really, really annoying when I was in situations when I was an employee and I could just see very stupid decisions being made. I'm not gonna talk about any details, but an extremely irresponsible way of spending money is how I'm gonna summarize the situations. And when you are the most junior or just a very junior employee, you can't do anything. Like, of course, you can speak up always, but I was quite realistic that me questioning that was not gonna change anything. And it was very hard for me to 1 month enjoy a super cool, super expensive Christmas party and the next day worry if I will have a job and a salary within a few months. So I did not like this situation of having no control over the direction in which my employer is going. And now, as I am my own employer, I have that control and I can now see it much more clearly that there is a time for fancy spending, but I'm nowhere near that time. Right now, all the money that I'm earning is going into covering my basic needs and into reinvesting into the business so that it can keep financially supporting me in the future. And when I see things are not going that well, I'm not saying that I have 100% control over it. I cannot suddenly force more clients to want to work with me, but the range of activities I can do, I can try, is higher. And even the fact that I see things are not going well and there are things I can at least try to do. While in the past, as an employee, if things were not going well, all I could do was sit and wait and hope that the impact is not going to be as bad, or that the client appears out of nowhere, or that some cash injection will help us for a few more months. And that was very tiring. So although in theory being employed is super secure and super steady, I personally do not have that experience from the types of employment in which I found myself in. And I can also, not just speaking of myself, but what I see from my clients is that much more often than before, they have temporary contracts. That is such an annoying situation where you feel like you need to constantly prove yourself, you need to put in an extra effort so that your contract gets extended. But that again is in the end something that is outside your control. There can be many reasons why a company decides to not extend your contract, or maybe that was never even on the table. That was from the beginning that that's a temporary position that will just end. While when you're focusing on your business, that can be something that can like outlive you, or something where there is not an end date. If you put in the time and effort and you keep trying different things, there will not be an expiration date, and just by default all the decisions are in your hands, and you can learn from your decisions, you can learn from other people's decisions, and you can try to make better decisions in your own business. Just in the long term, I think people who at some point in their career have been entrepreneurs, it's sort of a safety net. For example, for me, as I have been building my business, as byproducts of that, I have built a very strong personal brand. I have built a very strong network, and I believe those are assets that I can benefit in different ways for decades to come, whatever happens with my career and whatever I decide I want to do. Just the options that I have now available are much, much bigger than when all I did was looking for jobs and then being employed and going to work and doing my 9 to 5 and then going home and after a certain time getting laid off and then looking for another job. That approach to my career was extremely short-sighted. It did not build any sort of safety net, any sort of long-term career asset that I could lean back on when things went badly. And it meant that after each layoff, I was back to zero. I had nothing. I had no network to reach out to. I was nobody. I was not a known name, known face in the market. So back to zero, back to sending job applications. After many months, hundreds of hours of work, finally succeeding, getting employed, again doing nothing outside the day-to-day work that would build my career assets other than having a few more years on my CV. And when I started being an entrepreneur, that was a very big wake-up call that I had to start showing up really, really big time to even consider that I could start finding clients. But once I put in that initial effort, I'm now getting the returns. And the returns come in the shape of having more clients and having more financial stability. But I also know that if it really came to that I maybe later in life, I will decide that I want to be employed for a few years to take a break from owning a business. I really can't see that happening, but I'm saying that it's a possibility, and it would be now so much easier to get a job. And ironically, I don't have on my LinkedIn that I'm open to work. I'm not looking for a full-time job. And yet I have gotten 3 job offers in the past year, like 3 companies approaching me directly, offering me to have an interview. So the irony is that once you start focusing on your business, what it can lead to is actually a full-time job. And maybe if I was approached with a really interesting offer from a really interesting company, I would take it. The options that open to you are so much wider than focusing 90% of your time as a job seeker on sending job applications. And the final why I think it's a good idea is that I was talking here a lot about the byproducts, that focusing on your business, the process can give you all these benefits. But I haven't mentioned the main thing, and that is the end result, that you can actually build a successful business that very comfortably supports yourself, supports your family, gives you flexibility. You will not miss 5 weeks of paid vacation because you earn much more than you did as an employee, and you can take vacations whenever. And my path is not let's build a passive income and move to the Bahamas. My path is let's work hard, but let's work hard some reasonable amount of time, which for me is definitely not 40 hours a week. I work way less than that, but all these hours are spent on a very impactful work. And then what I earn is way more than what I earned in my full-time job. So I do less work for more money. I do work that I enjoy. I am learning lots of different things. I'm meeting lots of interesting people. And like I can really say that it has worked out super well. That it was the best decision I could have made back then as a newly laid off person to pursue my business. And I'm not saying I didn't have to make sacrifices, especially financially. I had to be extremely frugal for a lot of time, and I had to dip into my savings to survive, but it has worked out. It has all paid off, and I cannot believe the situation in which I am. And the way I approached my whole career coaching business is that if I could do it, you can too. So I always wanted to present myself like I'm a foreigner. I don't speak fluent Finnish. I don't have any kind of super cool degree or super cool work experience, but I succeeded. I got a job, and because I'm a normal person without any extra qualities, then I believe I can help you do the same. You can achieve the same. And the same approach I now have with my business. I'm a normal person. I didn't do anything super out of the ordinary. I definitely did not get lucky. There was zero luck involved in how my business worked out. And I'm saying that as a recovering imposter syndrome sufferer, but I couldn't, even if I tried, say, yeah, I just got lucky. I just didn't. I just had to work really hard, but not really hard in the sense that I would have to not sleep. I always worked very normal hours, but the hard work was in doing things that didn't feel comfortable, that were new, that felt scary. We can all try to find more courage and learn to do things that don't feel that comfortable, like marketing and selling. And that is something I am going to be talking about a lot in the webinar that again is happening super soon this Friday. So please check out the link and sign up. And if you are listening to this podcast in the far future, and that webinar has already happened, but it sounds like something that would really be interesting for you, then please send me a message and I will send you the recording. I don't know how, but I will figure out a way, because I already start preparing for the webinar, and it will be so valuable, and I really want that as many people as possible will have access to it. So please send me a message on LinkedIn. That would be the best way, and I will send you the recording. And that is maybe where I want to leave it. So I think this podcast and the webinar will really nicely complement each other, and I hope that if you tuned into the episode and you are someone who is starting to think that maybe focusing on your business could actually be the smart choice in your current situation, I hope that this episode confirmed your suspicion, because I of course don't know you, listener. I don't know what life situation you're in, but with the type of business that I'm talking about, the risk is nothing. To develop a simple service and to talk about it online and offering it to people and helping people with your service and learning how to market and sell your service is not a thing that requires investments, risk-taking, spending all your savings on it. It is such a safe thing to do, and as I hope I convinced you in this episode, it is something you can only benefit from. But also, keeping it real, it is not easy to start a business. It takes a lot of work, but I think everyone who wants to give it a try should have the opportunity and should have the courage to do so. And the rest is something that you will figure out along on the journey, and maybe that is something that I will talk about in the future episodes. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope I will see lots and lots of you in the webinar, and then we'll of course see in the next episode. Bye!